By 40% of people will have erectile dysfunction. By 50%. So now that we've got all male listeners' attention.
She's an expert in geriatrics, in nutrition, in health and longevity.
Dr. Gabrielle Lyon.
Humans are predictable and they can't seem to see outside of their own friction points. You're going to have 50 training books and 50 exercises books all gathering dust because people were not able to close the gap from being interested to being action-oriented.
Don't think that what we're talking about now is telling you to go to the gym and lift weights like every single day and get absolutely jacked.
If you brush your teeth and you shower, you should also be doing resistance training. People feel strength is a luxury. It is not. It is a responsibility. Independent living, better brain function, better erections. I should just end it there.
What advice would you give to those people who they know what it is that they need to do, yet they are unable to stay consistent with it?
Got to get really real. The first thing that you have to do is you have to...
Now, before we jump into today's episode, I just want to mention that this podcast is brought to you by me and everything that I have built to help you guys level up. If you want to transform your physique, build muscle, lose body fat, build strength, then you have the Thirst app. This has everything inside that you could possibly need to get yourself in shape, to hold yourself accountable as well. I also have the digital playbook, which is a step-by-step guide to help you guys build a following, monetize the following, and also build a strong personal brand. This is everything which I have done over the past nearly 10 years to allow myself to live a life of financial freedom and also geographical freedom. I can basically do whatever I want. Life is good. And I also have my newsletter, which has been revamped, where I'll share exclusive podcast insights, my raw thoughts on business, fitness, and much, much more. So if you're interested about any of those, check out the description. You'll find the links to all of them. Now let's get cracking with the episode. What's up, guys, and welcome back to First Things First. Our guest today is Dr. Gabrielle Lyon. How are you doing?
Doing great. Thanks for having me.
It's a shame that we can't be doing this in person, but Dubai is quite far away from Texas, so we're just going to have to make do for now.
Next time.
Yeah. I tell you what, I enjoyed your cameo appearance on our mutual friend's Chris Williamson's YouTube channel. I got a lot of views. I got a lot of attention.
He's a great guy. And, when I was jumping on here, I was like, are you related? I didn't know that I was supposed to be sitting down with Chris today. We're kind of off schedule. That's in another month, but really great to meet you. And I think it's going to be a great conversation, especially because you care about the gym.
Well, yeah, I mean, I've been training for 18, 19 years now, and it is literally... I don't know, sometimes going to the gym, I feel like it's the thing I look forward to the most every single day. I sometimes struggle to understand how some people just fail to be consistent when it comes to training or finding some sort of activity or exercise that they enjoy doing. And I think we'll talk a lot about today how important it is to actually build at least some muscle to optimize your health, well-being, and longevity.
Yeah, I think that, we are in a really interesting era. For the last 50 or so years, we've really been fat-focused and fat-phobic, and we can all see what the health outcomes are. We are at the precipice of being able to shift that and really be able to focus on the largest organ system in the body, which is not the skin. It is muscle, and by doing that, people will be able to transform all their health and wellness. I mean, that's a bold statement, but most things get better and nothing gets worse with more healthy skeletal muscle. It's not possible.
Mm-hmm. Why do you think there's still a block for a lot of people when it comes to, understanding the fact that going to the gym and lifting weights is actually going to be of benefit? Because I know a lot of people seem to... The idea of going to the gym and lifting weights, they're like, oh, well, that's not for me, or oh, I don't want to get too bulky, and they just don't do that and just go on the treadmill and run.
Well, number one, it's easy, right? It's easier to go do cardio because it's not something, if you're not familiar with weights, it's foreign. But I would argue that people have been lifting weights their whole life. You lift suitcases, you carry things, you throw, I don't know, ladies over your shoulder, or maybe you're throwing a toddler, whatever it is. You're lifting weights. It just might not be a structured program, but people and the human body is designed for stress. rather than designed just for cardiovascular activity. I mean, if 40% of our body weight is muscle, could be more, but it shouldn't be less. And if we can reorient ourselves to the importance of skeletal muscle, then, and I think it's a bigger cultural conversation. It's not just about lifting weights. It's not just about eating protein. It's about becoming stronger, more resilient culture, ultimately, is what I think it is. And that's
Mhm.
regardless of where you live, it is redefining what health really is for people.
Yeah. How long have you been training for? Because I can see those delts are popping there. We got some tricep definition.
Yeah, I
You're
just
looking
started.
good.
I just started last week, actually. I've been training since I was 17, but I started, it's interesting. So my dad was a collegiate athlete, and by the time I was 5, I was doing 10-mile bike rides. So physical activity was part of our normal existence, and we joke. My son, who is 4, is training for the SEAL teams right now.
Nice. Start them young.
He is sprinting on those curved treadmills, and then he's cold plunging, and then he's lifting kettlebells. The kid is 4. There is no quit in this kid. And I think it really goes to show that we have a lot of constructs in terms of what we believe is possible and what we believe that we can do. And a lot of misconceptions. And I do believe part of the misconceptions, for example, kids shouldn't lift, or you're going to get too bulky. I think in part it's a bit of a distraction, because if you believe those things, then you don't have to do it. Then you're not responsible.
Mm.
And, there's only so much that we can say, well, quote, we just didn't know. It's not true. And if you are always chasing the next shiny object, then you never have to commit to doing the next right thing, which requires a level of discernment and discipline to be able to do that. But I think that there's no way to argue any further that muscle is not one of the most important aspects of a life well lived, period.
For sure. Would you say there's a limit though? Because does it get to a point where you can have too much muscle, then it can start to have some negative side effects? Let's assume that someone is doing this naturally, but they're doing everything perfectly and they are seeing really good progress and they're just absolutely jacked beyond belief.
Not
Does it
going to
get
happen.
to a point?
Like, who do you know that does that naturally? It's not possible. There's
There's a few. I think there's a few,
naturally,
but there's
no
probably
way,
a few that
no
are
way,
lying.
no way. Because we have we have a threshold. So you do everything right. There is a certain growth threshold that the only way to push beyond that would be likely anabolic agents, which, by the way, are not necessarily bad. And anabolic agents have been used in medicine for decades. But when they are abused, then you're looking at over musculature. And it's not necessarily just the musculature, it's the overall weight. And again, it's not the muscle itself. It's typically the agents used in large doses, which then would affect organ systems, potentially larger heart, can increase blood pressure, things of that nature. But naturally, I've never seen it. I've been a doctor since 2006.
Hmm.
I don't know anyone
Yeah,
that's seen it. I mean, maybe, but
yeah.
it's a good question. But on the flip side, we know that you can have too much fat. And it's much easier to gain fat than it is to gain muscle.
Yeah. If we take someone like me, for example, I feel as though I've achieved what I wanted to achieve with my physique. And it's really just a matter of kind of maintaining everything now, although the maintenance is still a lot of work in itself. What I don't do enough of, and I should be doing more, is training cardiovascular focused training to train my heart and work on my fitness, because I would say that's probably not the best. Could be better.
I think that that's typically people fall into two camps. One, they love doing cardiovascular activity, or they love lifting. And definitely, you can lift weights and then lift weights faster, because I think the ultimate outcome that we're talking about is affecting mitochondrial health, which is extremely valuable. And people will say, okay, if you are going to do cardiovascular activity, what is the outcome that you want? And I think framing what it is that we desire helps us understand why we're actually doing something. So, from my perspective, we train muscle for a handful of reasons. We train muscle, number one, because we want power, strength, and healthy mass. People will argue mass doesn't matter. Mass matters, especially when you get sick. So at each 10% loss of muscle mass, there are worsening outcomes, whether it's impaired immunity, whether it's impaired wound healing, you name it. But there is somewhat of a stepwise decline in health outcomes when you are losing muscle mass. So number one, strength, power, mass. Number two, you are doing exercise to maintain muscle as a metabolic currency. So skeletal muscle is the primary site for where carbohydrates go, for fatty acid oxidation. It is your central point for metabolic regulation. And all of, or many of the diseases that we're seeing, like obesity, diabetes, cardiovascular disease, Alzheimer's, these are diseases in part that originate in skeletal muscle first, decades earlier. They're not diseases of obesity. They are diseases of impaired skeletal muscle first. And number three, good plumbing. You want to do exercise, and this is largely cardiovascular activity. Although, Mike, we did just publish a paper that relates sexual function and muscle mass. So myself and my colleagues at Baylor published a paper that showed the more healthy skeletal muscle mass you have, the better erections. So now that we've got all male listeners' attention, by the way, guys, at 40, by 40% of people will have erectile dysfunction.
Yeah.
By 50%. Here I am offering up on a platter healthy skeletal muscle mass by proxy from both resistance training and cardiovascular activity, helps with all the plumbing, better erections. Now everyone's going to be pounding down the doors of the gym. They're like, what happened?
Well, I've noticed it myself. Like sometimes when I have some big sessions, particularly when it comes to legs, if I've had like a really big leg session, I will notice some differences like 24 hours later afterwards.
So that's anecdotal and it's important. And again, so it's how do we get people to do what they need to do rather than have that lifetime of regret? And it's understanding what is valuable and why. And
wasn't there? I think there was a recent study of people comparing the amount of muscle mass in their lower body, and those that had more muscle mass in their lower body had longer longevity when it comes to living for longer.
Yeah, I mean, we see that, and we see that if you're stronger in midlife, you have a 2.5 times greater chance of living to 100. And there's a ton of data out there on why healthy muscle mass matters and strength. So it's not just mass, but it's also strength.
Yeah.
For health outcomes, So I put together this playbook, by the way, with our friend. Both of we're friends with the Guzmans. This is Buff Bunny. Buff Bunny's close. But I put together this playbook because, so the first book I wrote called Forever Strong was, again, it's to orient ourselves to muscle outside of the bro sphere. No offense, right? So we think about muscle, jacked and tan, skinny tanks, our buddy Chris and Chris are in there, slamming weights. Yes, but that is only one small part of why muscle is so important. It really is this organ of longevity. And it is such a disservice to disassociate skeletal muscle mass and skeletal muscle health from all of the rest of the things in the body, right?
Yep.
We have a whole field of medicine on the heart called cardiology. We have a whole field of medicine on the lungs, which is pulmonology. But muscle is an endocrine organ as well. It is an organ system, but yet it is still isolated to jacked and tan and skinny tank tops. So I wrote this first book to highlight and really lay the foundation of what we need to do to maintain and build healthy muscle. And then the playbook is actually the book that I wanted to write. And it was the book that I'd always wanted. And it combines all of it. So it's all of the pillars. You can know exactly what to do, but if you don't have the right mindset and you're not able to connect the dots. So when we started this conversation, you go, I just don't understand. I don't understand why people don't want to get in there and get after it every day. That's your happy place. Humans are predictable and they can't seem to see outside of their own friction points. And it's really important to train that up. Otherwise, you're going to have, like in my office here, you're going to have 50, training books and 50 exercises book all gathering dust because people were not able to close close the gap from being interested to being action oriented. And so this book, it's a playbook. I'm going to tell you exactly what you need to do to get the results that you want. And that's
And
why
it's
I wrote
is it for men and women, or is it directed more for women?
it. Well, I am a woman, so it's for everybody.
Yeah.
It's for everybody. It's for everyone. And the book
Mhm.
is visual. It has training. It has recipes that are easy. All the guys are like, dude, I'm not cooking. No, dude, you guys should, because
Mhm.
these are seriously easy recipes and it just has everything. Again, it's the book that I had wanted. It would make a great gift for people, but um, it just puts together the importance of, having also a strong body, but a strong mind. And they are bi-directional. You don't
Mhm.
get a strong body with a weak mind.
Yeah. So tell me, from the playbook and what you're following now, how does that differ from, let's say, for example, 10 years ago plus when you started lifting weights? What are some of the main differences you've incorporated now?
For the longest time, I thought that if you were not changing your body composition, then what are you even doing? And again, the biomarkers at the time, and I finished my fellowship in 2000, and I finished in 2015. So I did a combined fellowship in nutritional sciences and geriatrics at WashU in St. Louis. And at the time, we were still really focused on body fat. And you would start to hear this term fit and fat, like fit fat. Have you heard of that?
Yeah, yeah.
So this is kind of the construct that someone could have obesity and still be metabolically healthy. And in my mind, I was like, that is not possible. It doesn't make sense because it is all about muscle mass to body fat ratio. And uh, over the last year on my own podcast, so on my own podcast, I typically interview world-class scientists. And I was sitting across from this expert who is an expert in female fertility and PCOS. And you're thinking, okay, well, why do I care about that? Well, because PCOS is really related to two things: brain. So there's a neuro type of PCOS, and then there's a metabolic PCOS. And that is polycystic ovarian syndrome, one of the number one causes of female infertility. And it rides along with insulin resistance and challenges within the muscle and insulin. So I said to this MD PhD, Melanie Crease, and Melanie, what body fat percentage is it that people need to be able to get pregnant or put them in the best place and the best possibility of getting pregnant? And she looked at me like I was an idiot. She didn't really, but kind of. And she's like, Gabrielle, it has nothing to do with body fat percentage. It is the fat that is infiltrated into the muscle. It is the intermuscular adipose tissue that determines these metabolic outcomes. And I was like, holy shit. You're telling me that if my muscle looks like a Wagyu steak rather than a filet, which can happen, then it's going to be very clear that I'm going to have negative metabolic outcomes. And she was like, yeah. So 10 years ago, and by the way, we don't even measure this routinely. 10 years ago, this wasn't even, I would say it's still not even in the mainstream conversation of muscle, this intramuscular adipose tissue. But in the next 5 years, this is going to be the future target. And this is where GLP-1s can also have an effect, because I think we're going to start to see some emerging data that these GLP-1s affect intramuscular adipose tissue. So this is one thing that for everyone to know, that whether they are getting a physical outcome, the simple fact and the simple act of doing resistance training, because your muscle is like a suitcase. Okay, so are you with me here? Am I
Mm-hmm.
boring you? Mike, you like getting bored
No,
with it? Getting fired up,
no, no.
gotta like loosen up the shoulders. Okay, so if your muscle is like a suitcase, and you open up the suitcase and you're like me and you're going on a trip for 4 days, but you decide, nah, you know what? I'm going to pack for 14 days because listen, I need 4 pairs of shoes. I need these pair of earrings. I got to bring this leather jacket. None of that shit fits into that suitcase. So you try to close the suitcase and I'm jumping on the suitcase, but the clothes, it's just going everywhere. So if you imagine your muscle is like a suitcase and the clothes are like fuel sources, like carbohydrates, and you are not exercising, and you're just eating and you're sedentary, those carbohydrates and those fuel sources, they have nowhere to go. So your fat becomes marbled, or your muscle becomes marbled, and you see glucose in the bloodstream, fatty acids in the bloodstream, and amino acids in the bloodstream. This is an example that is a visual example, albeit maybe not so great, but the best I could come up with, of what happens if muscle remains unhealthy. And when you think about, we are so driven for outcomes, we're so driven for, abs and being jacked. But the simple fact is that when you are exercising, you're emptying out that suitcase, you are increasing your metabolic health. And it takes just one episode of training to improve in the short term that muscle health. And over a
Mm-hmm.
lifetime, that becomes extremely meaningful.
So what's your current training regime like at the moment then?
So I train 4 days a week consistently. I train Monday, Wednesday, and Friday. And then Saturday, I do a barf session where it's just terrible. And then Sunday, depending, we might go for a ruck. My husband, when you marry someone who's really physically active and a former military operator, you're never good at anything again. So you just go with it. So then on Sundays, we might ruck. He's in between marathon training. So, that's what it looks like. And it's 3 days a week of it's full body for me, because I really am just looking to improve and have injury prevention. So 3 days a week. And then that third day is some kind of cycle with like an airdyne and short interval metabolic training.
Yeah. Well, you mentioned the bar workout. What do you mean by bar workout? You're about a barbell workout?
Yeah. I don't, did I mention that?
You said something on the Saturday?
Oh, barf workout. Barf, like,
What that?
well, holy shit, this is a terrible idea workout. Where you get into that workout and you're 30 seconds
Oh,
in. I can't believe I signed up. Yeah.
okay. Yeah.
Try to get all my friends to come with me. No one wants to come with me. Oh, yeah, no one wants to. No one's interested.
But why is it so horrible that it makes you want to barf? Is it just like aggressive cardio?
Yeah.
No
Yeah.
rest.
Yeah. So there's the high intensity. So this is, and I cover this in the playbook. There's sprint interval training. And then I'm sure you're busy and you have to be really efficient with time. So there's high intensity interval training. And then you can think about the high intensity, which is about 80% your max output. You can do that comfortably for 10 to 20 minutes. But a sprint interval session is a max out effort, 10 seconds, 20 seconds, depending on how conditioned you are. And essentially, they are working this anaerobic system, but you're able to also, which is interesting, improve your baseline cardiovascular function when you are doing HIIT. So you said to me that you should do more baseline cardio. I would agree with you, but I have 2 little minions. I have 2 little children and a man-child. I don't have a ton of time. So instead
Yeah.
of doing a long, steady state, I use high intensity interval training, and I'm a little out of shape because I had an injury that I'm recovering from. So, yeah, it's painful. But if you can add in one extra session, so if you do 3 days a week of resistance, could be anything depending on where you are, 3, and then 1 day of a high intensity combo day. That is plenty to get into great shape.
Yeah. When people look at me or they ask me about how I've got my physique, they're like, "Oh, you must go to the gym every day and you must be at the gym for like 2 or 3 hours." And I'm like, well, no, actually, I'm in the gym for 1 hour. Maybe on a leg day, it's a little bit more just because there's so much like unloading, unloading of the weights, warming up, and so on. But it's always around 1 hour. And I tend to know when I'm done, when I'm spent. But the key to it is really just the consistency of doing those sessions every single week. And not that I really want to do this experiment because I enjoy training so much, but I would wonder how many sessions I could do in order to maintain my physique. As if, could I do just 3 sessions a week and maintain what I have now?
Totally.
I think I may not be as big, but I think the strength would still be there because I'm getting plenty of recovery in between the sessions. And you could bet for a fact that those sessions would be extremely effective in terms of how I'm performing.
So when we think about maintenance, it's much easier to maintain than it is to build. So let's say you're going through major travel times and days. There's a handful of things that you can do. Number one, you can bring blood flow restriction. So have you ever tried those blood flow restriction bands?
Yep, I tried it one time. I don't
Uh,
know. I don't know how. I don't know how I felt about it. It was definitely. I got a serious pump.
and again, you probably like to go in and lift heavy weights, and that's
Mhm.
amazing. And it's enough stimulus that it's going to maintain your mass. But again, it's much easier if you are providing stimulus and obviously overall calories and protein you're going to maintain. You don't have to. It would be interesting. I don't even know if there's any data to suggest what the difference would be in terms of, would you have to do X amount of volume to maintain like that hardness. But
Mhm.
I can tell you just personally, because I travel a lot for work, bring a resistance band. Again, you prioritize the gym, but if, you imagine if you're flying cross country or you're flying to a different country, then, you're going right to an interview. You don't have a ton of time. So having bands, having blood flow restriction, which you legitimately could put on the plane, pump it up and walk. I mean, it doesn't make you a popular guest on
On
the
the
plane, but it
flight.
doesn't matter, right? You're able to stimulate and increase that blood flow. I think it's sufficient enough to maintain. As long as, we
Mhm.
think that we have to do heavy weights, but it's the stimulus aspect. So how are we providing stimulus is the real question.
Yeah. So let's put ourselves in the shoes of somebody who has not lifted weights before. Obviously, first of all, they'll find going into the gym a little bit daunting because it's a new environment and they don't really have a clue what it is that they're doing. Would you say the most important thing before worrying about how much weight they're lifting is just mastering the execution of exercises?
No, people are not going to like that answer. I think that get in there and use machines. People
Oh
don't
yeah.
like to use machines because, so here's the thing, training is a skill, resistance training is a skill. Most of the time, you are going to have a technical failure. Your form is going to be a mess. You haven't trained before you have a muscular failure. Think about it. Think about someone who's never been to the gym or they are just interested in this. It takes time to be able to master that. It's annoying, right? You work with a trainer, and instead of putting load on, you're working on your form. And then you leave the
Mhm.
gym, and did you have a good workout? No. But you had a great quote form session. And I hate to say this, but part of it's not a waste of time, but it's definitely not as efficient as, again, if we believe that muscle is the organ of longevity, and that's what we're really talking about, then we understand that you have to stimulate that tissue. And while I love to believe that we have all the time in the world that we can practice, and someone's bringing us grapes and fanning us and we've got all the time in the world, it's not realistic. But if you can get in there and you don't know how to squat and you can't put a barbell on your back, you definitely can do a leg press. If you are afraid of doing a lateral raise with your shoulders, but you need to, and you are afraid of that you're going to injure yourself, or a lat pull down or a row, a machine, which a lot of the bodybuilders, or a lot of the community, they don't really like. Not the bodybuilder community, but I think that people say, oh, well, if you're not in there squatting and if you're not in there deadlifting, then you're wasting your time. And I think that's a mistake. Leverage machines and then worry about figuring out your form, and you'll get to earn the ability to do things that take more skill, but get in there and you have to train because it doesn't get easier. So muscle changes, and it becomes less efficient at sensing protein. So when you're in your 20s, I don't know about you, but I could eat the Twinkie French fry diet and I'd still be
Yeah.
ripped, right? Like I'm still,
Yeah.
I'd be ripped. Then all of a sudden you hit 30 and you're not so ripped anymore. And you have to really reconsider that Twinkie French fry diet. The tissue becomes less efficient at sensing protein, meaning dietary protein is necessary for muscle health. It's the most essential macronutrient as we age. And those are, there's carbohydrates, there's fats, and there's protein. Protein is what we need more of as we age. And there's a series of protein decisions that we have to make. For example, your age, your physical activity, and your metabolic health. But one thing is for sure, it becomes very difficult to build and maintain muscle if you are under eating protein, period. So I don't know exactly how I got down that rabbit hole of
We're talking
protein.
about machines
Machines.
versus free weights. Yeah.
Machines. So these are all the essential components to be able to stimulate that tissue.
Yeah. I think it would make sense. Because especially the risk of injuring yourself when using machines is a lot lower in comparison to using the free weights. I mean, if you've never been to the gym before, doing a deadlift, a barbell deadlift or a barbell squat is probably a recipe for disaster because you just, as you said, it's like a skill which kind of needs to be developed. And if you're trying to execute that movement with very little muscle tissue or strength to begin with, then something bad is probably going to happen. You're probably going to injure your spine. So start off with machines. It's hard to go wrong with machines. Build up a baseline of muscle and strength. Then after that, I would assume you can then start to play around with some free weight stuff if it makes sense.
I mean, listen, I put a dumbbell program in the playbook because it's dumbbells and bands because I want people to be able to do it wherever. And I think that the illustrations are good enough that people can be able to learn how to do a renegade row. They can learn how to do a press. They can learn how to do these things. But it shouldn't, so there's, in my mind, you can lift heavy, but you have to know what you are doing, or you can lift in a higher rep range, 12 to 15, 10 to 15 or so, but make sure that you are choosing exercises that provide enough stimulus that can be done safely. So that's what we developed for this program. Because if you know yourself and you know that you are not going to go to the gym and that you are going to talk yourself out of it for the next 6 months, you still have to take action. And also, it's not going to get any easier. And people are always surprised by their own human nature when it's very predictable.
Yeah. We'll get back to the podcast in a second, but first of all, I want to say a massive shout out to Bionic. I have been using their supplements for the past 4 years. I never knew what supplements I needed to take. I'd always go into the pharmacy and buy a load of random bottles and end up popping pills all day, every day, not having a clue if I was consuming the vitamins which I should be consuming at all. But Bionic came to save the day. They are a tailor-made supplement company that will put together your own specific formula based on your activity, your gender. I have Bionic Pro, where I get the blood test done every 3 to 4 months, and based on that blood test, I get my own personalized formula. For those people who don't want to do a blood test or don't have access to that, then you can go with Bionic Go, where you just have to fill in a short questionnaire, and based on that questionnaire, you will get your tailored supplements with a surprisingly high degree of accuracy. So stop the guesswork, sign up to Bionic, and ensure that you remove those deficiencies and build up your immune system. With the playbook, how would the approach for men differ in comparison to the approach for women in
I love
terms
this
of the
question.
programming?
Guess what?
It's
They
the
are not
same.
different. There's a lot of information out there hearing that men and women should train differently. No, we are of the same species. It is all about good programming and a foundation of strength. Doesn't matter if you are male or female. Men and women can put on the same type of muscle at relative rates. Again, it might be less for a woman because she's smaller, but it's less of a sex difference and more of a size difference.
Mm-hmm. And
I
I
think that's
guess I would,
nice, you know?
yeah, because I used to coach. There's a couple of years when I used to coach people back in the day in my 20s. And when I would train both women and men, the approach was very similar, but what would be slightly different would be exercise selection. So I wouldn't have a female doing some like heavy shrugs, working on the traps. There was maybe less emphasis on quad dominant lower body exercises and more focus on glute and hamstring dominant exercises. Because I don't know if you've seen it with any of your clients and from your past experience, but do women tend to develop their quads pretty easily?
I think that, and I actually just had this conversation in my on my podcast. Can men and women develop glutes and quads and lower body the same? And it's basically, it seems to be, again, it's not sex difference. So it's not that a woman could develop her quads more than a man. It's exercise selection and probably
Hmm.
pelvic positioning, depending. Um, but I think that, for example, shrugs is a good example. If a woman is going to enter into a training program, she probably doesn't want massive traps. And maybe she does, but that would be, I could see where she might not want that or might not want a bench press because she just doesn't want massive pecs. So I think it comes down to exercise selection and interpersonal variability,
Yeah.
which it goes against what we're seeing in the narrative right now. Because the narrative right now is that men and women should train differently. And the data doesn't support that.
Hmm.
Um, and that's important to recognize.
Yeah. I know quite a lot of women who they go to the gym fairly regularly, but they literally just only train legs. They do zero upper body work. Which I mean, sure that like they look good. They have a very petite and slim upper body. Then the legs are just like really quite jacked. Glutes look amazing. But I say to them, although it looks good, you've got this big imbalance of strength when it comes to your upper and lower body. So if you're not sufficiently training some of your upper body muscles, in particular your back, like when you're doing some of these compound movements, there is that risk of your lower back giving way and actually injuring yourself, particularly if a lot of those lower body exercises that you're doing are machines which don't train the lower back.
It's a really good point. There is something that we put together called the Foundational Five, and my colleague, Dr. Gerard D'Onofrio, who's a wonderful physical medicine and rehab specialist. So he's an MD who's also fellowship trained. And what he did is he put together a foundational five for core strength and activation. And things like hip airplanes, bird dogs, believe it or not, calf raises, which, him and I were fighting about in the book. I'm like, we're really going to put this in? He's like, no, you've got to work on ankle mobility. And so there's a handful of, and then 90-90 breathing. So there are a handful of things that can be done outside of the gym to help augment the ability to perform when someone is in the gym or, doing these exercises so that whether they are there focused on training legs, they're still doing things to build core strength because it is really important, especially for injury prevention, like you said.
Yeah, I mean, I have a lot of people who they ask me if I've ever had any injuries when it comes to my lower back, or what should they do if they have either an injured lower back or just a weak lower back. And I don't know about you, but I've found that those people, including myself, who really train and load up their lower back tend to have less issues when it comes to lower back injuries and back pain because you have a strong back.
Yeah, being sedentary, you'll hear that um this this thought that there are healthy sedentary. So if you look at the data, it's quote healthy sedentary individuals. Have you ever heard people talk about that? They'll be like, oh,
Healthy sedentary individuals.
so you look at PubMed and you Google, okay, health outcomes, blah, 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 healthy sedentary individuals. And that's an oxymoron. There's no such thing as a healthy sedentary individual.
Yeah.
And and we see this when someone goes into a cast, we get atrophy. You have muscle atrophy and strength atrophy very rapidly. And as you get older, the rate at which muscle loss happens is drastically accelerated. So a younger person will lose, I don't know, might take them a month to lose a couple pounds of muscle, or, longer than 30 days versus a week for an older individual who is on bed rest. And, this was off the heels of you talking about back pain. And when something hurts, people, instead of thinking exercise and strengthening the muscles around that injury will make them feel better, they have this kind of mindset where, well, I'm not going to do anything.
Mm-hmm.
And obviously, it really depends on the injury, but oftentimes it makes people worse because it makes them significantly deconditioned. And when that happens, it becomes more challenging. I mean, it's never too late to build muscle and get better, but it does become more challenging. And we're talking about strength and activities of daily living, but what becomes more profound is as people lose muscle, then we see an increase in insulin resistance, an increase in insulin resistance, an increase in blood glucose. So we see the beginnings of a metabolic syndrome, not because they're putting on weight, but because they're losing muscle. It is more detrimental to lose muscle mass than it is to gain body fat.
Is that why you coined the term muscle-centric medicine?
Well, I coined the term muscle-centric medicine because there's a huge gap. And by the way, we also created National Muscle Health Day. Month. November is we created a national holiday, National Muscle Health Month, which November, when this podcast is coming out, is the first time that it is going to be announced as a national holiday. And so muscle-centric medicine is it's giving skeletal muscle justice and recognizing the importance of muscle health for everything. I am telling you, in the biohacking community, people are looking at these things and sunning their rear ends or all this other stuff. Okay? Like whatever it is that they're doing, and that's great. You said you love the beach. You're probably out there doing that. But aside from
especially in Dubai, it's they love to see me do that in Dubai.
So we have to recognize that all of that, if we think about the architecture of our house, which is our physical self, there's lots of external things like, the sun and your caffeine, all these things. But if your architecture, your foundation is not strong and capable, none of this matters. You are not going to be able to overcompensate for the fact that you have low muscle health. It's impossible.
So how do we get this? How do you spread the word and get this movement out there?
Well, the first thing is having a understanding that there's a new national holiday.
I know that's what I mean, but how do we get everybody to talk about this national holiday?
Well, number one, you have to recognize that muscle is the largest organ system. And roughly 80% of Americans, I know you're not in America, but they fall short of these training goals. And 50% of our older adults have low muscle mass. And also, I bet you for industrialized countries, it's not that different, right? The disease of comfort is low muscle mass. And regardless of where you live. So skeletal muscle is misunderstood. I don't know. I think that we should all have some kind of commitment of what we're going to do. Maybe it's, 10 push-ups that day, 50, 100, depending on what kind of shape you're in. But really thinking about our evolutionary heritage, muscle has always been front and center, and we've lost that. So to gain that back, I think collectively, as we talk about what we're doing, I'm sure there's things that we can do. So set realistic fitness expectations, and realistic could be something a little edgy, like running a marathon,
Yeah. I
and
think
enjoying the struggle.
what I would want more people to do and understand is that, you know, if you do go to the gym and you do want to put on a bit of muscle or get stronger, it doesn't mean you have to dedicate your life to it. It doesn't mean you have to stop doing all those other forms of activity that you like and just go to the gym and lift weights. Like, you could literally just have one dedicated session to begin with, or maybe two, make them ideally full body sessions so that each muscle group is getting hit twice per week. And then all the other stuff you like to do, you can continue to do that. Like, if you like to run, go and run. If you like to play paddle, play paddle. Like, if you want to do the high rocks, do the high rocks, whatever it might be. Don't think that what we're talking about now is us telling you to go to the gym and lift weights like every single day and get absolutely jacked. Because that's not what we're trying to do.
And also, it's not even about that's a really good point, because it's not about being jacked. And that is a
Mhm.
conversation that's the entry point. That's what gets people interested. But, it is not the focal point of the importance of skeletal muscle. And whether you are changing your body composition or not, simply dedicating yourself to recognize that, listen, it's mandatory. If you brush your teeth and you shower, you should also be doing resistance training. But we live in a society where people feel strength is a luxury. It is not. It is a responsibility. And if
Mhm.
strength is the entry point, then that is at the top of the funnel that allows for independent living, better brain function, better erections, men and women. I should just end it there. Boom.
Do you know what? From my experience, one of the best things about having more muscle mass than the average person is that my metabolism is just always firing. Like, I can have days where I'm literally not really doing anything. I'm just walking around, and I will burn way more calories than the average person just because I have to move my body, and there's a lot of muscle which is working just from walking around and doing my day-to-day stuff. So some people will see me eat, or whether it be the types of food that I'm eating or just the amount of food I'm eating, they're like, how are you so lean yet you eat that much food? I'm like, well, first of all, the majority of the food that I'm eating is good quality food. And secondly, my body is just a furnace. Like, it's full of muscle that needs feeding. So in comparison to those people, like, this always happens when I've, my clients in the past, when they want to lose fat, their goal is, all right, well, I just have this target weight of, 75 kilos. I just want to lose 10 kilograms. I'm like, no, if that is your goal, you're going to starve yourself. You're probably going to lose a load of muscle. And then if you compare your metabolism to when you're 85 kilos versus 75 kilos, it's going to be less. So instead of having that weight loss goal, you should have the goal of, I want to try and maintain and hold on to as much weight as possible whilst losing as much fat as possible.
And it's interesting. Now this is exactly right. You're switching the conversation from what you have to lose to what you have to gain. And if you think about muscle as a metaphor for life, if you focus on what you have to lose, then you are very negative and you are constantly in this hypervigilant state versus reorienting yourselves to a conversation of, what is it that I have to gain and what do I have control over? Skeletal muscle is the only organ system we have voluntary control over. Can't tell my thyroid to pump out X number of thyroid hormones. I can't tell my heart to beat. I mean, some yogis can at 52 and a half beats per minute. But I can say, okay, I'm going to do one push-up, or I can curl my bicep. It is a organ system with voluntary control. And that makes it very powerful. And, for example, let's say someone is listening and they get stuck in a negative mindset. People will say, we'll go meditate out of it or go do some kind of process. If you are down the spiral of you have a negative repetitive thought that you cannot get over, good luck. Good luck trying to out meditate yourself out of it. Maybe some people are really skilled. I'm not that smart. I'm not able to do that. You dunk me in a cold plunge, I'm done. I can't think about it. I don't even know what I was bitching about before. It's over. You do a max out sprint, you're not thinking about it. You pull the lever of skeletal muscle to create a bidirectional relationship of mental fortitude and a capacity to be able to control your mind. I challenge someone to be in the worst mood ever and think about it and get into a 50-degree or 48-degree cold plunge. I'd like to still hear them bitch about it. It is nearly impossible. Have you done a cold plunge before?
Of course.
Can you be in a negative mindset and remember what you're bitching about?
No, I just get on with it.
You can't, right? You could be thinking about something. So essentially, you are using your body as a tool
Hmm.
to recalibrate your mind. And that's something special because it's more difficult to use your mind to talk yourself out of something, but almost 100% of the time you can pull the lever of your body to move your mind in the direction for positive outcome and to really gain control over your own agency, which becomes critical.
Hmm. What advice would you give to those people who, they might be listening and, they know what it is that they need to do, yet they are unable to stay consistent with it and often find themselves making excuses for themselves why they don't have to go and do the thing that they know they should be doing?
Got to get really real. Humans are predictable. And the first thing that you have to do is you have to really anchor in onto that why. Why are you doing this? And until you find that why, then you will go through this spiral of regret time after time and then be surprised by your own human nature. So the first thing is you really have to get really clear. And then you have to set standards, not goals, because you're failing. You allow yourself to fail off of a goal. But if you become disciplined enough to set a standard for your life and a standard for the way in which you operate, then you no longer allow yourselves to hit a goal or not hit a goal. For us, as a military family with 2 little kids, we are the kind of family that on a Saturday morning, we get up and we train together. That is what we do. That is our family standard. Not, oh, did you work out today? None of that. Because at the end of the day, we get to do this once. And the clearer you are, the less regret you have when you don't keep promises to yourself. Another way you train that up, say, okay, I'm not ready. I can't commit. Then you put in various types of friction. There's emotional friction, there's physical friction, there's environmental friction. And friction, by getting better at cultivating your muscle against friction, which is kind of doing the thing that you don't want to do, then you become much more skilled at navigating your way out of it. So, for example, I tell a lot of my patients, we have a medical practice, Strong Medical, and a lot of them, one way that we train them up to be able to withstand the friction is um, pick 3 things that they really love. So some people love coffee, loud music and exercise, like loud music and stimulants before training, and Starbucks. For 5 days in a row, they flip a coin. Heads, they get it. Tails, they don't. By the 3rd day of not getting the thing, so the first 3 days, it's super annoying. Can you imagine? You're going to go train at the gym. You love your music and you love your caffeine and stimulants. Heads, you get it. Tails, you don't. You're like a little pissed inside. And then you got to do it
Hmm.
again. And Tuesday, you do it. Tuesday, you don't get it again. You're like a little pissed. And then by the 3rd day and then the 4th day, you're like, fuck it. You're way less pissed. This gives you an opportunity to then practice things that you don't want outside little things, outside of big, meaningful things. So that's just one example. And again, pick the real dopamine anchors. Maybe you like shopping for, I don't know, clothes or cars. Go and flip a coin. Heads, you get to do it. Tails, you don't. And that's just one example. The other ways of emotional friction is, um, just pick that one conversation that you really just don't want to have, that's just been lingering, and you have to call one person each day with that conversation or that person you don't want to talk to.
Hmm.
So you
You
practice
know,
these. It's annoying, but you
for
expand
me,
your capacity.
for me, one of the things which I always do, particularly if it's a session I don't really want to do, is I'll always focus upon the feeling which I will have once I complete it. So it could be, you know, let's say, for example, you invited me to do one of your barf workouts. I know for a fact that it would just be pure hell doing it. And then even the lead up to it, I'm just probably getting nervous because I know how horrible I'm going to feel. But then if I visualize and think about how good I will feel once that session is done, that feeling of accomplishment, the feeling of doing something that I didn't want to do, not to mention just the endorphin rush I'm going to have after doing a session like that for the rest of the day, that makes it all worthwhile for
Mm.
me.
But you've mastered that, right?
Yeah.
And so then how do we get other people so you get that dopamine drive? I'm not worried about you. You've got that anchored in. The next thing that I would do is what are we doing next to challenge you? So if you've
Hmm.
mastered the physical domain, what are the other things that we need to put you in to do a crucible? So there is this idea that humans always strive for growth. And if you do not go to the challenge, like it or not, that challenge is going to come to you. So let's say you, Mike, are someone who's mastered this physical aspect, then you better be ready to pick that next hard thing.
Hmm.
And that next hard thing should make you a little uneasy
Yeah.
because if you are not constantly challenging yourself, um, then I think it just leaves opportunity on the table for just
Yeah. You get,
ultimate excellence, right? And mastery. That I think that's what this is, building stronger, better, more resilient humans.
yeah, you definitely become too comfortable. And that can, not that it would necessarily lead to a depression, but certainly I feel like if you just do get too comfortable and you don't challenge yourself, you feel like something is missing. Like it's hard to explain, but whenever, especially for me, if I learn a new skill or do something difficult, put myself into some sort of uncomfortable situation, once I pass that, complete it, accomplish it, whatever it might be, that's one of the best feelings that I can possibly have. But that's
I,
only going to be felt if I continue to set challenges for myself and overcome obstacles.
that's exactly right. And nothing could be more important, which again, you've anchored into this. And one thing that I see with people that, humans are very good at recognizing something and then doing the same thing over and over again. And that's why it's really important to make sure it becomes a positive habit. So, for
Hmm.
example, people will either become very good at avoiding difficulty or very good at understanding that friction refines them. And so they will go out and search it out because it creates enough resistance that they are able to build a stronger body and mind under
Hmm.
pressure, right? This is about how do we thrive under pressure? And pressure now is optional. Whereas I think before it was never an option.
Hmm.
You, it was a hard grinding life. And now you could sit in your house and never talk to another human being and then order Instacart or Amazon or whatever it is. And pressure now is optional. And that will create a slow decay of the human spirit.
Yeah. This one's quite interesting, though. When it comes to stress and pressure, I think both are good, but too much of them may have negative side effects. So if we take, for example, I don't know, like two big names on social media who have a great deal of influence, like Chris Williamson. Obviously, you appeared in his recent video
Never-
about,
What's up, Chris?
and Jordan Peterson. So Jordan, I think he's dealing with quite a few health-related problems at the moment. Obviously, Chris has been for the past year or so. Now, could these two people are full on workaholics. Like these guys are working their asses off. They're traveling all around the world. They're quite hard on themselves and they want to push themselves. Now, could you argue that some of those negative health of symptoms that they're experiencing, is it down to too much stress and too much pressure and not enough focus on recovery and rest, and maybe something to do with your mental self-talk?
It is, humans are complicated. And basically, the perfect formula, I would say, is that the challenge for the person meets their capacity, is right on the edge of their capacity. For example, um, let's take someone who's a professional speaker and they've been speaking for years. They have an ability and a capacity, and then you put them in a little more challenging position where the stakes are always going to be higher. One can acclimate to that in its own entity. However, if there are underlying health challenges, the physical and mental reserve are going to be lower. So there are two separate things. There's the physical and mental reserve that exists for each person. We all have our own whatever buckets. But if someone is being challenged with, say, chronic Lyme or some mold exposure or something, it then chips away at that natural capacity that that person has built up. So the challenge that someone would normally face that would be, no big deal, or on the edge of their capacity, seems to be even more overwhelmingly challenging. Again, that's one kind of example. Do we have to counterbalance stress, internal, external stress, with the kind of ebb and flow of life? And I would say stress comes down to, this might be a little controversial, this is my professional opinion and personal opinion, is that stress comes down to someone's interpretation of the experience. That we've always heard of fight or flight as the stress response for humans. But there are two other stress responses. There's tend and befriend, and there's the courage response. And humans, again, are very focused and fixated on, I get stressed, I get fight or flight. But there are two other responses that can be cultivated and are more natural to people. For example, my husband, who is in his second career as a surgeon, something happens, he doesn't know what's going on. He doesn't go right to fight or flight. He goes to courage, where he'll be like, okay, cool, what do we got to do? We're jumping on a plane now? Are we, something's going on? What's up? His initial response is not fight or flight. And it's not tend and befriend, which would be mine. Shit hits the fan and I'm like, hey, Mike, what do you need? I got you covered. I'll go to tend to my kids or tend to people in my community versus fight or flight. So that would not be my initial response. And so this question was, do we have to balance the stress with the life? And I would say yes, but a large part of stress is our interpretation and our internalization of what the meaning is. And if you choose the right stressor and you apply it with good intention and your capacity is there to meet it, then you're able to grow.
Mm-hmm. What's your thoughts on the recent, I guess, surge in biohacking and all of these new machines which are coming on the market? Are you using any of them, or do you think a lot of it is kind of a bit wishy-washy?
Depends on what it is. I mean, I'll try it. You name it, I'll probably try it. But
is there anything you're regularly doing at the moment?
I mean, I'm really into cold plunge. I'm really into cold plunge. I'm loving that. But again, so I have done a lot of work with military operators. That's, when I finished my fellowship, this is the group that I fell into treating. So tier 1 operators for us would be, depending on how you think about it, the SEALs and the Rangers, and I guess I'll throw in the Green Berets and maybe a couple pararescue guys, whatever. But, when you talk about stress, so there is how you internalize it, and then there's the stressors of war. So I just want to be very clear, we're not talking about necessarily the stress of war. And with these new machines, I think that, or new dopamine modulating kind of treatments, those things to treat PTS or PTSD, that is somewhat of a separate conversation. Um, but yeah, so the biohacking space, again, cold plunging, I love. That's red light therapy, also love.
Hmm.
Sauna, so love. But these are not that avant-garde.
Yeah. Well, I think there's a lot of the stuff which seems interesting. I mean, even like the oxygen therapy, it looks pretty cool. And there is more data coming out that it actually does have health benefits, but it usually is for most people inaccessible, either because it might not be in your local area or it's just too expensive. So a lot of these things are luxuries, quite often, which people either can't afford or don't have access to. So that's not necessarily to worry, because I think even just the basics, such as eating properly, getting sufficient protein, calories, good quality food, resting, getting good sleep, going to the gym, exercising, you can't really beat it when it comes to those three things.
I think that's absolutely true. And, hyperbaric has been used in the military for a long time. One of our really good friends, Kirk Parsley, he's a sleep doctor and hyperbaric doctor. These hard chambers, which is again hyperbaric oxygen therapy, have been used for years, and they are typically available. They can be available with through insurance. They're used for wound healing, all kinds of things, and they are accessible. So again, if someone does have health insurance and they're looking for those things, I do think that there are avenues that people can go down there. But there are also a lot of free resources, like getting outside,
Hmm.
being off your
Yeah.
phone, probably not having screaming kids. No, I'm just kidding.
Well, I've got that to come at some point. Would you say that things are looking better as in America as a whole? Are things changing,
Yeah,
improving?
yeah. I think this is going to be a really great decade where we're going to see a change and a real sense of strength. And
Hmm.
I think that a lot of people are coming into their own self and being less checked out. Again, I obviously can't speak for the world and I can't speak for everybody, but from what I see, I think that there's a lot of responsibility being taken for people within themselves, which is what we've needed for a really long time. There's only one way to not be strong, and that's to not do it, right?
Yeah. Yeah. I think overall, I've noticed a change in people's habits, especially if we compare to when I was growing up, when I was a teenager or my early 20s. Especially in the UK, there was a very big drinking scene. Like everybody, like it was almost weird if you didn't drink alcohol. Whereas now, I think there's a lot of people who are in their teens, early 20s, who are just choosing not to drink, because I think there's a lot more information out there now that is just showing how many negative side effects alcohol can have. And thanks to, YouTube, podcasts, people like you who are putting out great books, I think there's just a lot more information out there which is helping people to get into good routines and educating them on what they should be doing and what they should avoid doing. And I think a lot of people, they are just obsessed with looking good and feeling good, and also being able to look good and feel good long into the future. I mean, that's one of the things which I'm now starting to focus on. I'm 35 years old. I do feel like I'm at my prime. I'm probably the strongest I've ever been. Um, Largely down to the programming that I'm doing, the training programming. I'm not really doing that much partying or drinking anymore. But I'm so happy that I can do it. I can go to the gym. Everything is working. I have no injuries. I look good. I feel good. I've got that strength. I want to have that for as long as I possibly can do. So what are the things that I need to do to ensure that I can keep living this life long into the future?
When you're doing it, number one, you're getting your mind right. Without that, nothing matters. Everything is short lived. your why of doing it has to be anchored, because it's irresponsible to not think things are going to get hard. It is going to get hard. Things are going to happen. Not everything is going to go well all of the time. In fact, I guarantee it. And recognizing that you build up capacity, that no matter what happens, that you can weather the storm and you become more resilient, and you have the expectation that things, sometimes they go well and sometimes that they don't. But at the end of the day, it's just another Tuesday.
Mm-hmm.
And if you can create a level of neutrality within your day-to-day life, it transfers over to some of the most successful people that I have ever seen. And I have been in practice. I finished medical school in 2006. I have been taking care of some of the most extraordinary individuals. And I will tell you what, the most capable are not that different. And one just glaring attribute that they all have, that are at the top 0.1%, is they're neutral. Everything is not too great and not too bad. It's just another Tuesday. I'm going to give you an example. So, my husband was in the SEAL teams for 10 years, and the community is just really great. And I had just gone to see Jocko Willink, who is, again, I don't know if your audience is familiar.
Yeah.
I saw Jocko. We did a podcast together. And I don't know, 4 days later, his entire gym burned down. And so I was like, Jocko, I sent a message, are you okay? And he was like, good. You mean good?
Classic.
Good. Everything got burned. He's like, we really need to redo that locker room anyway. Right? So that's just an example. It was just like, good.
Mm-hmm.
And I think that, again, that sounds extreme, but it doesn't just happen overnight. It's built up over time, and it's practice with those techniques of friction. I have all these techniques in the book because I believe, again, this book, this one here, it's not about eating protein, building muscle. It is about building stronger, more resilient humans, period.
Mm-hmm.
And in order to do that, they have to develop a level of neutrality. So, this is the longest winded answer ever. You said, what do I need to do so that I can be doing what I want to do by the time I'm 55 and married with a couple kids, all this stuff? Number one, add in a level of neutrality. It's just another Tuesday. Number two, figure out your standards of eating, your standards of training. It is not the next hot diet. It is not the next hot training program. This is your standard. It's not January 1 and you're at the gym. You're not setting goals anymore. You're setting standards. And then number three, you don't need a crowd, but you need just a few within your community to do it as a team. Life is a team sport. People think they need a lot of friends, a lot of support. You don't. You don't need a crowd, but you need one or two people to hold you accountable, because if you're not willing to do it for yourself, you'll be willing to do it for them.
Who are your one or two people?
That's easy. My husband, and we have a very small inner circle. Evie Pamporis, one of my best friends. She's a former Secret Service agent. Took care of was on 4 president details. Is a Secret Service. She's now an NBC analyst, crime analyst. Yeah, she's also my size. I'm 5'1". She's taller. She's 5'1.5", but she's extraordinary. Yeah. It's extraordinary. So we keep each other accountable.
Yeah. That's a good point. Being surrounded by people who will hold you accountable. That can be hard. I mean, if you're surrounded by...
You don't want yes people.
Yeah. It's good that when I'm thinking about it now, who are the people around me, closest to me, who hold me accountable? I think I need to get a few more friends in my circle. The ones that are going to call me a little bitch.
That's
when
right.
I say no to...
we need to talk. I'm like, oh, we need to talk. You want that? Like, hey, this, and this, and that's what you want.
Hmm.
And, it's obviously kind, but, uh, yeah, I mean,
You need people who are going to be real with you and know when you're slacking off or not living up to your potential.
oh, yeah. Yeah, Evie and
Yeah.
I, we decide who's gonna who's working harder at the moment. How many are
Hmm.
it's not real, but we're both you have to match, I think you have to match your, um, uh, not attributes, but the things that are really important to you, that they
Hmm.
have to be the same. So, what are your values? And then if you find someone with your similar values, typically your inner circle has your values. So for
Yeah.
us, for our family unit, we believe in hard work, honor, integrity, doing what you say you're going to do, and full accountability, right? Um, and I think that if you find, whether it's a friend or a partner, some people value fun, some people value, I don't know, whatever it is. But once you find the core values, excellence is important to us. Capacity is important to us. Being, reliable, those types of things. And so you want people that hold you accountable in that way. And it becomes really important. And it's earned, by the way. The biggest
Hmm.
lesson that I have learned is I think as humans, we like to give our trust away. Trust has to be earned, and it's earned over time.
Yeah. Do you do much one-to-one coaching at the moment?
I do 1 day a week. But we have a whole medical practice.
Okay.
So strong medical. We have we have an amazing team.
But if you like, for example, if somebody's like, "Oh my God, I love your stuff. I need help. Will you coach me? Will you work with me?" Is that something you do, or
I do. I do.
okay?
And all they have to do is contact Strong Medical or go to my website,
Hmm.
drgabriellelyon.com. Yeah, I love seeing patients,
Yeah,
they're
that's
amazing
good.
because I think that a relationship that's really important, there's a handful that are really important. The relationship that you have with your partner, the relationship that you have, believe it or not, with your doctor, because they're your teammate in health and wellness. You want to have a good doctor, a good accountant, a good lawyer, a good partner, and a best friend.
Hmm.
But, people are like, oh, doctors. Man, that's your A team. You think that things go wrong from 9 to 5? No, they don't. Things go wrong when you least expect it. And you want someone who's going to be in the trenches with you that's going to have your back no matter what. Call you on your shit.
Yeah, but the key to that is finding a good doctor,
Yeah, it's true.
which sometimes could be easier said than done. But they're out
You'll
there.
know. People will know because it matches their personality. It's very important um that you are well matched, you know,
Hmm.
um, really well matched and well suited together because you're going to be in it. You want to be able to count on that person.
Yeah. Good stuff. Awesome. Well, I've appreciated you coming on the podcast. I've enjoyed this conversation. Where can people find you?
Yeah, drgabriellelyon.com, and that's the website. Same on social. It's Lyon. My podcast, The Dr. Gabrielle Lyon Show. Not very original, but I wanted people to find it. We have a great newsletter, a great medical practice, and of course, this playbook, which I'm really proud of. Again, I'm much more proud of this than I am the first book, which is a great book. I think that
Hmm.
together we can really move the needle for people, and that's what's needed.
Yeah. Well, Christmas is coming up, guys, and if you're struggling when it comes to choosing the appropriate gift for that special someone, maybe they need a little bit of extra motivation at the start of January, the book is going to be the perfect gift.
Covered.
Awesome. Thank you, guys. And thank you, Gabrielle.
Thanks so much.